For some reason, I'm unable to share my screen from my side, so Iggy's going to share it for me and be my clicker, which is really great. Thank you. All right. So I'm here today to chat a bit about the She Can Do community. And I think it's really quite fitting because the concept of community has come up quite regularly in some of the previous talks. Before we get into that, Iggy gave me a really great introduction. So basically, I'm a freelance experience designer, and I'm currently consulting. I'm currently consulting for the Vitality Group, and my focus there is conducting and maintaining their global research capabilities, which means that I learned a whole lot from Nancy, and I can't wait to implement some of those learnings. Additionally, as someone who's really passionate about communities and most importantly, using design thinking to grow those communities, I'm a director for 2 different organizations. The first is called Girls Invent Tomorrow, and this community inspires and guides the future female leaders within the STEAM industry. And the second is She Can Do, which I'm going to get into more details for this talk. Iggy, you can click next. Well done. We're on sync. So She Can Do is a nonprofit organization which aims to create an inclusive environment to upskill our members in crafting human-centered experiences and build a culture of knowledge sharing and empowerment. We officially launched in February 2019, which means we're close to our 2-year mark, and that's really exciting for us. And with that being said, it means that there's so much that I could share with you about our journey up until this point, our failures, our successes, and it could really take a while. So when trying to narrow down to a specific focus, I really struggled. And when I struggle to do something, I know that I've actually done it wrong. And that is because I haven't tried to collaborate with my team or my community. And as you'll hear during this talk, there's nothing that we do, or at least nothing that we do successfully, that is the result of one person's actions. So when I started off listing individually the things that I think are great about our community, I asked the community what they think I should talk about. And of course, I was completely off topic. The things that interested me or were successful to me were not the things that the community had listed. Go next. So when asking them what they thought were our most successful or most interesting aspects, this is what came up. Number 1, why this community is so important to so many people, the way in which we run our organization in a transparent and human-centric way, and lastly, the diversity that exists within this community and how that in itself is so successfully empowering. So as much as I'm presenting this talk, I need everyone to know that there were so many voices that helped me to craft the content here. Most importantly to Kelly and Kate, who are my 2 front-facing directors. And then one person in particular who recently reminded me how valuable and rewarding this type of community work can be. Her name is Nadia, and Nadia is a new member. She joined us about a few weeks ago, and she asked me to put her in touch with someone who could mentor her and give her feedback specifically about her portfolio. And to me, it felt like a really simple task to get her the feedback that she needed, and I'll get into the details of how we did that. But after that interaction that I saw as just a day-to-day community involvement, she sent me this message last night. You can click. And it may seem small, but it was so meaningful to me that I screenshot it. So for someone in the community to think of me and furthermore show me that they were thinking of me, completely just closes the loop on this whole concept where we provide support, knowledge, relationships, whatever seems relevant. People get value from that. And in turn, they provide support, friendship, and all of that back to us in return, or to others, thus expanding the network and the work that we are doing. And this leads me to the first topic, the power of the community. Jack Fisher is one of our really great humans who's recently started at a new job. So she said, "I'm so used to being part of this community and others. We forget how many people don't have that. Now that I work in a new town with different humans, I see how special a sense of community, friendship, partnership, and intellectual stimulation are, especially with 2020 being such a shit show." So how is it that she manages to make such a powerful community? What is it that we do that consistently creates that same Nadia type pattern? Well, we're a network of highly intelligent and successful designers. I've made so many friendships during this time, friendships that allow for equal levels of support to be given and received. We get to see each other grow. And I mean, so many people have joined us as unfamiliar, unsure, not sure what to do next. And after some time with us, I then see those same people becoming highly successful and impressive. And being a part of a network with so many genuinely interested people gives us in turn so many opportunities. So selfishly, as a freelancer, I know that I would not be anywhere close to where I am now without this group to rely on for their support, advice, and opportunities. And it's like a family, really. Every time we run an event, it amazes me how many people I know by name, know what they're currently working on, know what they're struggling with or trying to achieve. So with Nadia, for instance, she was asking for one person to give her feedback on her portfolio. And as always, I don't trust myself alone. So I decided rather to create a Slack channel where I added a whole bunch of members who I know are currently working on their portfolio, as well as a whole bunch of members who look at portfolios often for hiring purposes. And the great thing about that is when Nadia shared her portfolio, she got more than one voice giving her feedback. And that kind of sort of feedback from different people makes it so much more powerful. And being able to know the members so well and connect them where relevant is extremely powerful. And another reason that makes us really powerful is that we run this like an actual job. My team puts so much energy and focus into their work for this community, and I don't think it comes across well enough in the day-to-day public events. But I can tell you now, there's no ways we'd be as effective as we were if they weren't putting in as much effort as they do. So we've got like a monthly planner that helps us to coordinate our roles and specialties. I run the strategy and membership engagement. We've got Kate who runs all of our content design and Kelly who runs all of our visual design. We've got a social media planner and a Kanban type board to keep track of our immediate tasks. And the reason that we do this is, well, so every 6 months we run a team retro. And during that time, we analyze all of our past events to figure out what are the trends and patterns that lead to a successful event. We found that the events that are not as successful as we would have liked them to be, usually are the events that we weren't well organized for. And so we make sure, and this is something that we recently installed, we make sure that we have this type of planning with us at all times. And additionally, we've noticed about one another that as a team, we're all quite anxious and detail-oriented people. So to ensure that we feel calm and in control at all times, we know that deadlines and planning is what really works for us. And with this planning that we do, it's all based on figuring out what's best for our community. So for example, Nadia needed advice for her portfolio. Many people need advice for their portfolios, So instead of just helping the one, we created a Slack channel showing people who want advice that there is a space for them to use. And now I'd like to talk a bit about the other tactics that we've initiated based on our member research. If you can go to the next slide. Thanks. So the first thing is usually our meetups pre-COVID, when they were done in person, used to last about 3 hours with a talk and a workshop. When we tried to replicate this online, we found it was very obvious actually that people struggled to concentrate and stay engaged for that amount of time. And so for our online events that we run now, we restrict them to a much shorter time. Then with regards to the topics that we cover, so we run and we do surveys and research with members that result in the specific themes that we need to cover in a year. And that's what dictates what we need to focus on, irregardless of whether we're actually interested in that or not. And lastly, something that we've implemented that's quite new. So we used to directly source our speakers. So we would go to people that we knew and get them to come in and run these events with us. It then dawned upon us that this wasn't quite empowering because we were putting a spotlight on people who already have the spotlight. It's all the people that we know in the industry. And for us, we really want to create a space for anyone to share their thoughts and feel supported. So we know that we can't be the ones to choose the speakers each time, as that leaves no room for us to hear from anyone who thinks differently to us. So now with our member requested topics, we share a calendar showing what topics need to be covered for the next few months and allow for people to volunteer instead. We then work very closely with those people to help them with their content, their delivery, their workshop facilitation, basically ensuring that it meets our member needs while empowering that one individual. And then onto the third topic, speaking about empowerment and diversity. Nicole is one of our really long-time members, and she made a really important and interesting suggestion, and one that is particularly difficult to talk about. So she said, I was initially hesitant to share the view of diversity because of that low response you guys got to having the workshop on the topic of sexual harassment in the workplace. I strongly feel that systemic injustice is real and something that most walk on eggshells about. You set this thing up to combat that, and it's working. It's dealing with so many underlying issues, and the women that run this movement are all diverse. We engage on different concepts and form great insights because of our diversity. You host discussion panels and have 5-minute talks that allow others to share their stories, which gives everyone a view of so many different perspectives / realities and worlds. So there are a couple of things here to consider. So the first is I obviously need to give you guys insights into this sexual harassment work concept. And then I want to share a bit about how we try to maintain diversity in our organization. Remembering that diversity is not always about demographics. It's as simple as allowing for different voices to be heard and respected equally. So for example, with Nadia, who was expecting one person to give her feedback, she instead was given multiple voices to hear from and internalize herself. And that really is diversity at its simplest. All right. So to get to the sexual harassment events that Nicole mentioned, my sister works in theater, and she started hosting sexual harassment workshops aimed at teaching people how to identify it, how to understand consent, and to know what your rights are. Additionally, the workshop aimed to teach people how to speak up, and also importantly, how to react if someone comes to you as their leader or manager. Being in the creative industry ourselves, we felt that this would be very relevant. And of course, it's a difficult sensitive and scary subject, but I see it as something that's extremely important. So anyways, as time drew closer to the event, we had extremely low numbers on our RSVP list. And I felt as though if we didn't intervene, the whole event would just be a complete waste. So I started reaching out to various networks, trying to find out why the response was low. Here's some screenshots taken from a discussion that I had with people in the industry on a UX WhatsApp group. I'm going to give you all a few minutes to digest these varying ideas. I'm sorry if it's a bit blurry. So we pulled out this conversation after canceling the event to understand the reactions of the industry to such a topic. It's clear that it makes some people extremely uncomfortable, which is good because in an ideal world, nobody should have to be comfortable with such a topic. But unfortunately, this discomfort resulted in the basic idea of sexual harassment is not a UX related topic, which to me is the same as saying that like our low education standards are not a UX topic, so we shouldn't be dealing with that. But the great thing about our craft is that it's something that can be used to solve problems across any field. As long as it's a problem, we can use design thinking methodologies to understand it further and propose effective solutions. Anyways, the point of this exercise is to look at how difficult it is to empower or support those who have a different view or a diverse view. It's especially difficult to support those when they're going up against such dominant voices in the industry. Negativity and discomfort somehow always seem to win or discourage those who have a differing opinion. And unfortunately, this is the only event we've ever had to cancel. We do hope to pursue this topic further, but we just know that we need to do a bit more research and understanding and find a better way to approach it. And as a leader of this community, it's something that unfortunately, I have dealt with very badly, which is why I think I feel like I need to learn about it. So, I mean, there have been several times where we've struggled with this. So for example, when we first started out, there was a man who was, I'd say, in his late 50s who joined the sessions, and he seemed genuinely interested in the content and our mission. And then I was told by one of our members that he had made her feel uncomfortable. And so I asked to describe why. And she said he was standing too close, or he was following me around the whole session. And to me, I didn't know what to define this as, or rather how to deal with it. So I ignored it. He continued to attend the events, and then he approached one of my team members and asked her to chat more on her work processes over a coffee. And that's something that we do regularly with our members. So she agreed. She then told me some of the things he had said, telling her that she had beautiful eyes, and he was telling her about his like massive mansion that he lives in with no one, basically very suggestive, yet at the same time not concrete enough for me to know what was happening. And still, I didn't know what to do about it. It had now come up twice. I had heard from others that they had found that he made them uncomfortable, but was this sexual harassment? Could he just be an old man who is unaware of his social surroundings? And if I do nothing, am I disrespecting the voices of my female members? And if I do something, am I overreacting? And even if I did do something, what would I say? Please don't stand so close, or please don't come anymore. And can I say this without a concrete reason? And then additionally, we decided to have a collaborative project with the Girls Invent Tomorrow team, where we were going to run design workshops with teenage learners, teenage girls specifically. And he volunteered to be one of the helpers from the She Can Do side. And knowing what I knew, but not being sure about what I knew, I had to make up a lie as to why he couldn't help. And I think that it was probably a very terrible way to handle the whole situation. So I have no knowledge in how to address this. And as a leader, it's incredibly dangerous not to have the skills to protect your members. So you can hopefully see where the sensitivity and difficulty lies here. But if we keep avoiding it, am I just going to be the person that hopes a strange person gets the hint and moves on and hope that that is as bad as it gets? I don't know. So our diversity in this team is something that is really important. As a leader of this community, I'm so privileged to have the voices of people across different ages, races, genders, different environments, different work contexts. I don't think that I can quite express just how much of a difference it makes to have such diversity amongst us. And most of our most valuable events always have a diverse attendance in terms of all demographics, but also from different contexts and backgrounds. And we get to hear so many different views that don't clash with one another, but rather just expand the knowledge that we gain. And I think that that is something that I hope to always place a focus on. And Iggy, you can go to the next slide. So if you take away anything from all of this, remember that there's no community without its members. When you create community, you need to involve and empathize with your members at every step. A community is extremely powerful. So if you treat it right, you will be rewarded. And lastly, don't be scared of diversity. Take baby steps at a time. And that's it. I guess if there's any questions, if we have time, or if the
Thank you so much. No. I mean, thank you so much for that, Inez.
Cool.
So thank you much for the talk. There's lots of comments in the chat section. Because I'm sharing my screen, I actually can't see if there are any questions.
Sorry.
Just give me a second. I can't. So there aren't any questions, but I think people, for me, just to comment, and I'm hoping that people can maybe while I just chat for 10 or 15 seconds, that they add their questions to the Q&A section. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think I remember that WhatsApp, that chat.
Yeah, you were part of it, but I blurred out everyone's names.
Yeah, no, so, and one thing that I want to kind of touch on, so my personal belief, and this is my personal opinion, is that UX, because there's a perception, and again, this is my opinion, and I'm happy to be challenged on this. The perception is that UX is digital, and UX is not, and my opinion is UX is not only digital. There's a strong focal point for UX to be digital because there's a huge amount of digital and technology and related being used, which facilitates UX in an awesome way. But UX is as simple as someone going to a public toilet, and there being a water crisis and not being able to use water. And people complaining, saying, I can't use water anymore. I have to use the sanitizer, which smells like hospital or leaves my hands sticky. It's emotion, it's experience. It can be anything tangible, physical. It's not only digital. And I think that many need to kind of break away from that barrier, even though we find ourselves entrenched in the digital and technological industries and spaces, and that's part of our daily lives. But that's why you get social UX. That's why you get ethnographies where people, where you can see how people are doing things, without the dependency of technology, but a UX problem still needs to be solved. For people like farmers, for example, that don't, that in certain parts of Africa, that not using digital phones, or are limited to only using feature phones.
Mm.
So I
Yeah.
think, coming back to the sexual harassment side of things, I mean, that's something that's where there's a focus on it, I think, globally right now, in many respects. And I think I agree with you that it's a discussion that needs to be had, but it is one of those discussions that's a bit more sensitive, and we can't just approach it in a way, but it needs to be,
Mm.
we need to have the freedom to speak about it and see how do we solve the UX related challenges to sexual harassment and all the other, to use the words of that person, HR issues.
Mm.
um,
Mm.
so yeah, I completely agree with you. Awesome talk. Thank you so much for this.
Thanks,
um,
guys.
so there's two questions.
Oh yeah.
So the first question is, do you struggle with getting sponsors for these events and workshops?
So we do, um, especially with COVID now, because we're not hosting at an actual venue, and we're not doing actual events. People are hesitant to give us sponsorship.
Hmm.
But before that, we were doing pretty well with a monthly sponsorship coming from DVT, and they were always really supportive of helping us through our monthly costs. Um, it's something that we have planned to focus on in the next coming months, because um, you need to be quite active on social media and very public facing, and look at us, we're amazing, and we are absolutely terrible at that. Um, so my team and I, we were discussing this last night, saying we need to get better at social media and understand how it works and what is the content to post and all of that. And
Hmm.
so hopefully when we upskill ourselves in that a bit more, we'll be able to get in more sponsors.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, just to add to that as well, I mean, from a UX perspective, from a UXSA perspective, sponsors have always been a challenge for us as well.
Mm,
Um, and like DVT, and I know there are some DVT people. Yeah, DVT has been awesome, even to the UXSA family. However, there's still many companies that see sponsoring UX related events as a nice to have. They would rather sponsor an agile event, or an engineering event, as opposed to a UX event. But regardless of that, people like you, the community leaders, are going to try and push this regardless of sponsors. If we can, it helps tremendously. But the objective is to provide something to the
mm,
people that need the information. Um,
I don't know
so
if I can just
yeah.
add onto that um, that point as well.
yeah.
Especially when it comes to a meetup, I find a lot of companies are very open to hosting meetup space and offering up, pizza and beers. I think that if
Yes.
there's always community members that will come up and say, "Hey, listen, my company's quite interested in sponsoring some pizzas if you guys are interested." So we find a lot of that, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, I see Lizette on here as well, so I know DVT is very
I see
sort of.
Liz.
Pardon?
Yeah, they're fantastic. Yeah, I'm seeing Liz's comments.
Yeah, DVT is they top of the game when it comes to that. And there's a lot of other companies out there, that is probably not being mentioned or spoken about as well. But there's definitely companies
Mm,
out there, especially now, during the pandemic sort of era now. I don't think people are going to be hosting at their companies. I don't think this year, probably
yeah.
till the middle of next year. I think that's going to be something out of the question. But definitely sort of on a monetary value where people want to get their brands, exposed and seen at a low cost, but also, being able to sponsor the Uber Eats for $50. These vouchers I see is going around companies now as well, which is always a great way of getting
Mm,
sponsorship for your members as well. So that's quite interesting. So yeah, that's my two
mm.
cents. Sorry, I'm giving DVT a lot of love here, but
They deserve it. They deserve it.
So let's move on to the next question. So the next one is, can you share the link for the sexual harassment workshop? Do you still have the link? Is it live? Is it not?
Yeah, so if you go to Meetup and you find our page there, it will be listed in past events, and you'll see that it was cancelled.
Okay. Okay. Cool. I'll try to find the link and I'll drop it in the chat. Next question from Cara. Was engagement low for the events in the beginning? If it was, how did you motivate yourself to continue?
So actually, it started off really high. So I think our first event was about 40 or 50 people. And then that led to us a crisis, because then we're like, oh, we need bigger venues. And then, so we get those that are really big, and then we get others that are actually really small when we have about 8 or 9 people. And it really kind of depends on the speaker and how famous they are. It depends on the ease of access to the venue and obviously the topic. So the broader topics, like if we were going to do something on user research, that gets a lot of people, a lot of interest, because it applies to all levels of people. And then we do smaller events that may be focused on a very core skill. So we did one recently on UX writing, which is not for everyone. You have to be interested in that specific topic. And so that is then smaller. And it doesn't discourage us at all, because we know what to expect based on the event that we're putting out there. We know how many numbers to expect for that. I think with the sexual harassment, that was low to the point of when I think it was like 4 RSVPs. So then there's just no point in having the event. And yeah, no, it doesn't discourage us, because the smaller sessions are actually so much easier for us to handle. And we get to do, like, each person probably gets to ask questions to the speaker. Each person gets to engage with one another. So it's a lot more intimate, and they tend to get a lot more out of it, which we like sometimes. The big numbers are nice.
Yeah.
It's just different.
Thank you. That answers Cara. The next question from Tokozo. With the multitude of languages in the community, how important is it to invest in time? Is it to invest time into research? My questions are jumping around. Where's this question now? It just disappeared. Okay, let me try again. With the multitude of languages in the community, how important is it to invest time in research into languages for UX to help facilitate civil projects?
Sorry, can you say that last bit, Iggy?
So I'll read it again. With the multitude of languages in the community, how important is it to invest time in research into languages for UX to help facilitate civil projects?
So civil projects, not too sure what's meant by that, sorry. In terms of multi-language, I think that's a really important point. And disappointingly, we haven't done anything on investigating, looking at a multi-language facilitated workshop or talk or content. Everything has been in English, and now I feel a bit bad, and I'm going to put it on our list as something to investigate as to whether there is a need for that. And I hope that answers the question. Sorry.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Last one, and this is from Theo. So this is a question to the community. Is there a UX meetup group in Durban, and will James Murray start it? So I think it ties into all the community work that you're doing. And since we've got some people from Durban here, and James, he's from Durban, and he's been attending all our events from the beginning. So I guess that's why Theo's asking a question, inspiration from the work that you've been doing.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool. So when I started, initially we were labeled as Ladies at UX. I had just moved from Cape Town to Joburg, and Ladies at UX Cape Town was getting started, and Lara, who runs that, had asked me on LinkedIn, like, would I be willing to help run that? And I said, oh, I've just moved to Joburg, but I've been seeing what you guys do, and it's so cool, and I wish we had this in Joburg. And then she was like, well, then why didn't you just start it? And so then I did. So, yeah, I think anyone should just start it up. It's really nice. And Tom's tips from yesterday, I think would be very helpful if you want to start something up. And of course, feel free to contact the She Can Do community. We'd love to help people build communities and get something started. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, thank you so much for that, Inez. Thank you for the talk. Thank you for the inspiration and the answers. There's lots of comments in the chat section. I think you may just want to reflect on that.
I'll take a look.
But for now, we're going to take a break.